Welcome to this Illinois and Iowa cross-state tax filing lesson series. This is a combined lesson for when a resident of one state has wages and salary plus withholdings in the other non-resident state. My name is John Cook. My contact information will be shown on the last slide, and please contact me if you have questions or recommendations for improvement to this lesson. Please also feel free to pause or replay the video as needed to meet your learning needs. Here we go to become tax filing heroes. The sequence of this presentation is as shown on the slide. If you are viewing the Microsoft PowerPoint or the Adobe Acrobat PDF version of this presentation, you may use the hyperlinks provided by clicking on the underlined section you desire. If you are viewing the YouTube video version of this lesson, your hyperlinks to jump to various sections of the lesson are provided in the video description section. Next up, our introduction, with our focus, purpose, and the way ahead. VITA volunteers for Iowa and Illinois are blessed with 3 cross-state tax filing situations, as shown in blue at the top of the slide. In summary, the 3 situations involve wages, non-wages, such as unemployment or gambling winnings, and part-year residents. Our focus for this lesson is highlighted in green on the left, wages earned in a non-resident state. This lesson's bottom line up front is that VITA Volunteer Tax Filers must key what they see so that federal and state forms are accepted by the revenue services. Therefore, the volunteers must use TaxSlayer's functions to enable taxpayers to use the Illinois-Iowa reciprocal agreements and account for income wages when not earned in their resident state. Here is where we are going with this TaxSlayer lesson. We're going to enable our clients to use the Illinois-Iowa reciprocal agreement for wages and salaries. Basically, it's this. The resident state gets the tax. The non-resident state agrees to not tax the income, plus refund all of the associated withholdings. The impact is that the resident state has the tax liability. Often, there is an under-withholding in the resident state as the money went to the non-resident state. We get to inform the non-resident state that the wages or salary are not theirs, and we'll have the non-resident state refund the associated withholdings. Then use the non-resident state's refund to pay any tax liability to the resident state. How do we accomplish this? An Iowa resident will file a non-resident Illinois return, including an Illinois Schedule NR for non-resident wages belonging to Iowa, and an Illinois resident would file a non-resident Iowa return, including an Iowa Schedule 126 for non-resident wages belonging to Illinois. Let's see how to accomplish these tasks using TaxSlayer software and get those refunds. We'll accomplish our tasks using these TaxSlayer steps. First, in TaxSlayer's state returns, add an additional non-resident state return. Second, fill in all necessary entries for the non-resident questions. Next, use these options in the non-resident states forms. For Illinois, we'll find the menu option of Income from Federal Return Subject to Illinois Tax. For Iowa, we'll use the menu option of Adjustments to Income Subject to Tax. In both states, we'll then use Other Adjustments functions to enter the amount to be subtracted from the income that is misassigned to the non-resident state. TaxSlayer will then generate the needed forms, described later, to address the misassigned wages or salary and the overwithholding in the non-resident state and the underwithholding in the resident state. Let's look at the specifics. So now let's view some examples starting with Part 1, as shown on the left in blue. An Illinois resident with Iowa wage income and withholdings. Then we'll view its counterpart lesson in Part 2, which is the reverse or flip side. An Iowa resident with Illinois wages and withholdings. Here we go, on to Part 1. You, the volunteer tax filer, are at the VITA site. Your next taxpayer customer has filled out their Form 13614C and are now at their intake and interview. You note on the page 1 that they have an Illinois address. On page 2, section 3, question number 1, you see that they have marked that they have forms W-2 and noted 2 jobs. Now you may employ your interviewing skills to determine what is really happening with our customer's income. You might ask, how many forms W-2 do you have for this tax year? May we look at the amounts? Do you have any withholdings? In which state or states? Let's take a look. The key decision factors we'll use in this lesson are, first, our scope of service, as for us volunteers with the United Way of the Quad Cities area, as we provide services for taxpayers only in Illinois and Iowa. So our guidance and examples are for these 2 states only. Next will be the taxpayer's state of residence and any time frames that they were in or out of that state. We'll next review that the state guidance on earned income and wages and the ever-important reciprocal agreements between Illinois and Iowa regarding state-assigned earned income and associated withholdings will need to distinguish earned income from non-wage income, such as gambling winnings on a Form W-2G and unemployment compensation on a Form 1099-G, and their withholdings. But all this non-wage income is covered in another follow-on lesson. Back on track with earned income, salary and wages. Our Part 1 example concerns the state of Illinois, earned income wages on a Form W-2, and especially focus on our Illinois resident with the W-2, as the income and withholdings have an in-error assignment to Iowa. Oh my. Our sequence as we continue with Part 1 will be as follows. First, an official reference, especially for the reciprocal agreement for Illinois with Iowa, and a review of the Iowa Schedule 126 instructions. Then we'll use TaxSlayer's workthroughs to cooperate with an Iowa Schedule 126 for non-residents to only get the needed refund of the withholdings. Hopefully, the end result will be that the taxpayer's resident Illinois Form 1040 accounts for all of the earned income wages. Our Illinois taxpayer brought in a Form W-2 from a part-time job. While their primary job was in Illinois, you notice that for our Illinois resident's part-time job, that the line 15 entry shows IA for Iowa, and there is income and withholding in this non-resident state. Well, life happens. Question: What will TaxSlayer do with this Iowa assigned income and withholding? Let's look at the Illinois guidance using the instructions for a Schedule CR. It's credits for taxes paid other states. But we're going to use this guidance hopefully to separate out wage income versus non-wage income. Wage income is going to be wages, salaries, and tips. Any monies on a W-2. What if I live or work in a state that has a reciprocal agreement with Illinois, such as Iowa? Based on the reciprocal agreements between Illinois and Iowa, Iowa does not tax the compensation of Illinois residents on its wages. If your employer in Iowa withheld that state's tax from your compensation, work W-2 monies, you must claim a refund from that state withheld by filing the correct forms to that state. You have to get the Iowa money back to you to pay Illinois. You may not claim tax withheld by an employer in Iowa as a credit on your Illinois return. That's another procedure. So again, we have to separate out income that are wages, W-2 monies, wages, salaries, tips, as opposed to non-wages, which might be gambling winnings or unemployment compensation. So you have to get the Iowa withholdings back to you to give to Illinois. And I actually understood what I said. In our trustee publication 4012 on page D5 is guidance for the input of Forms W-2 data. The IRS has placed this guidance to enter exactly what is on the form, to key what you see. Remember all those recurrent error codes described in the publication's page Q5? A lot of them are incorrect W-2 entries. The IRS and state revenue services demand accurate entries for their returns submitted electronically. What you type has to exactly match what is in their databases. Okay. Let's look ahead at the steps we're going to take for our Illinois resident who has W-2 wages or salary with in-error Iowa withholdings. Our non-resident state actions are: number 1, file a non-resident Iowa Form 1040 with, number 2, an Iowa Schedule 126, the non-resident schedule, and number 3, we'll use that schedule to unassign or subtract out the W-2 wages and get a full refund of the Iowa withholdings. Our needed TaxSlayer actions will be to use the Iowa state menus as follows. First, the basic information plus the non-resident information, followed by the main section entitled Adjustments to Income Subject to Tax, and use the Iowa Other Adjustments and enter the amount from W-2, Box 16, and for the reason try wages paid to certain individuals. And we'll conclude with Iowa's itemized deductions for the amount of the tax year's federal refund for which they took an Iowa withholding credit the previous year. Usually, this is $0, as the taxpayer is a non-resident and never filed in Iowa or took this Iowa deduction. But you must physically enter a 0 to satisfy TaxSlayer. Let's see what the TaxSlayer entries would look like. The first step in the main state menu is Add another state return. Click on Iowa. For the residency status, select non-resident. And now prepare to use at least these 3 Iowa menu options. First, basic information. Second, adjustments to income subject to tax, and then the submenu of Iowa Other Adjustments. And finally, the Iowa Itemized Deductions, as you get to answer the Iowa question about any federal refund for which the Iowa taxpayer took as an adjustment the previous year. Here we are at the first menu item on Iowa's Basic Information. Indicate the taxpayer is not a resident of Iowa, plus select in the county option that of part year/non-resident. Now we are at Iowa's primary action area of adjustments to income subject to tax. Open this menu. Go to the bottom of the list and find the sub-option of Iowa Other Adjustments. Open this section. Enter in the amount box the actual amount to be adjusted out of the Iowa income stream. Remember to use the in error Form W-2 Box 16's amount exactly. Key what you see. Next is the box that is a drop-down list of reasons for this adjustment. Find and select the option for wages paid to certain individuals. Save your work. Review your saved work. That is what you want TaxSlayer to use to adjust out the in-error income in Iowa on the Iowa Schedule 126. Use the Back button to return to the higher level menu. The last and a mandatory item is Iowa's accounting for the current tax year's federal refund from the spring filing, if the taxpayer took a subtraction from their income stream for federal withholding the previous tax year. If you attempt to exit the Iowa return without answering this question, you'll get this error message. TaxSlayer won't let you forget. So, remember, fill in the federal refund box. If your taxpayer did not file in Iowa or did not take this Iowa deduction adjustment the previous year, enter a 0 in the box. Now you're ready to exit Iowa, unless you have any other Iowa entries based on your customer's tax situation. Time to double-check your non-resident return work. In the State Master menu, you may double-check your work with the State's TaxSlayer print function. Click on the little printer symbol, and you will get a PDF file with just the state's return, with the data that has been entered to this point in time. You, therefore, have the capability before and then during the quality review to make sure you have everything needed for the customer. Inspect the top of the Iowa Non-Resident Form 1040 for name and address. Let's keep inspecting our Iowa Non-Resident Form 1040. Line 1 picked up the wages from the W-2 and the Federal Income Tax Form IRS 1040. Double check that page 1's last major section, the Step 7 on the federal refund, is $0. Step 7, line 27, has no federal refund data. Good. Keep on going. Flip the Iowa 1040 over to page 2 and note that the corresponding initial running Iowa tax has been calculated. Keep on going. The taxpayer got their Iowa personal exemption as a tax credit, almost to the punchline. Now we're at the Iowa tax. Somewhere in all this horse manure, there has to be a pony. But wait, we've arrived 1/3 of the way down the second page, and we reach the Iowa Schedule 126 line, and a tax credit matches the Iowa tax liability, driving the tax to zero owed. Ta-da! Don't forget the in-error withholdings. And the withholdings turn into an Iowa refund. Congratulations! All this good news on the Iowa Form 1040 was driven by the Iowa Schedule 126, the tax calculations for non-residents, and also part-year residents, but back on task, non-residents. On this schedule, since you adjusted out the income, there is no Iowa income, so the ratio calculation is 0. While the Iowa tax was calculated, the software calculations provided an Iowa tax credit equal to the tax, thus wiping out any tax owed in Iowa. No tax means the monies withheld in Iowa are to be refunded. That's good news on the Iowa Form 1040 form. Be sure to remind your taxpayers that this refund from Iowa may be needed to address a tax liability in the resident state of Illinois. Illinois residents owe their wage income taxes to Illinois, but in this case, the withholdings went to another state. Just a reminder, one tax filer to another. That's the example of an Illinois resident with Iowa income and withholdings. Let's now review the second example with a reverse scenario. Our Part 2 example is of an Iowa resident with Illinois non-resident wages and corresponding withholdings. First, let's review this guidance from the Iowa State's website. Iowa does have a reciprocal agreement with Illinois, and that you follow the similar procedures described before. Now let's review the key steps we will do on behalf of our Iowa resident with non-resident Illinois wages and withholdings. We again will be filing a non-resident return, this time in Illinois, using an Illinois Schedule NR for non-resident. Our TaxSlayer key steps in Illinois State menu are as shown. We'll use the section on e-filing and basic personal information. Then we'll answer the non-resident questions plus the key inputs using the section entitled Income from Federal Return Subject to Illinois Tax, using the section's bottom option of Other Adjustments, where we enter the amounts to be adjusted out of the Illinois income stream, using the numbers from our Forms W-2, Box 16. During the intake and interview, we, of course, will be alert for the critical information on the W-2s. The taxpayer's address illustrated in the blue box is compared to the state with the income and withholding in Box 15, illustrated in the red box. You'll be noting amounts in Box 16 as compared to the total income in the federal sections. When we get to the TaxSlayer state level menu, we'll need to create an Illinois non-resident return. So we select Illinois and select your Illinois residency status as non-resident. In our Illinois state level menu, our TaxSlayer key steps are as shown. We'll use the sections on e-filing and basic information. Then we'll answer the non-resident questions, plus the key inputs using the section entitled Income from Federal Return Subject to Illinois Tax, using this section's bottom option of Other Adjustments, where we'll enter the amounts to be adjusted out of the Illinois income stream. In the Illinois non-resident questions section, select that the taxpayer is a resident of Iowa in order to permit the reciprocal agreement. This Illinois entry section will be crucial to fill out the Illinois Schedule NR, and it is entitled Income from Federal Return Subject to Illinois Tax. TaxSlayer instructions include two options for Illinois income. If you select Enter Other Income, be sure to use a negative number to adjust out the income from Illinois. But what might make it a little easier and a lot more sense is to use the option of Enter Adjustments to Illinois Income. This is what you will want to do: adjust, subtract out the Illinois income. Let's view this option. Scroll down to the last option, entitled Other Adjustments. Here, you may enter the amount to be adjusted out as not to be Illinois income, but is to eventually be Iowa income as the resident state. The Illinois state entries are now completed. Time for a double check that our Illinois work is complete and accurate for what we desire to tell the state revenue services. When you are in the TaxSlayer state level main menu, you request a PDF file to see what the Illinois return looks like at this point with the provided entries. Click on the little printer. Double check your taxpayer's Iowa address and that you have created an Illinois non-resident return. On page 1 of the Illinois Form 1040, at Step 5, Illinois income and tax have gone to 0 with no entries. Good. Moving on to the Illinois Form 1040's page 2, the Illinois withholdings are noted, and the withholdings are in the refund lines. Good. Keep moving along to the Illinois Schedule NR. The Iowa reciprocal agreement with Illinois is noted. Illinois income has fallen to 0, as has the Illinois tax. Congratulations! You have a proper Illinois tax return to execute the reciprocal agreements regarding cross-state wages and salaries, and get the in-error withholdings returned to the taxpayer. You're a tax filing hero. Please remember, make notes on the Customer's Form 13614 to remind the taxpayer and quality reviewer of the actions and entries you have made. These cross-state reciprocal agreement actions apply to wages and salaries only. There are different actions and lessons that apply to non-wage income, and we'll focus on gambling winnings and unemployment compensation. Here are more reminders for your review. Key what you see. Use the reciprocal agreements between Illinois and Iowa, essentially stating that they won't tax each other's residents' wages, salaries, and work-related income only. You'll need to adjust out the non-resident income and submit a non-resident tax return. We are to do these actions for wages, salaries, and work-related income only. There are different procedures for non-wage income, such as gambling winnings and unemployment compensation, described in other cross-state lessons. This guidance is for educational purposes only. You may seek more state-sponsored guidance at the state's websites as shown. Here are some of the references we use to present this lesson. Please do your own research with these key references. This ends this cross-state lesson. There are some notes for you to read on the screen. Thank you for your kind attention, and please move on to the next lessons as we prepare for this tax filing season and hopefully future seasons. You are a tax filing hero.